She was born in Raleigh, North Carolina. After high school, Lee studied architecture, receiving a degree in environmental design and a BFA from Meredith College in Raleigh, where she concentrated on painting and sculpture, and she stayed longer to get a teaching degree. Let's see if I got this right. Okay. She then taught secondary visual art for 12 years, 10 of which were at Athens Drive High School. Then she relocated to Franklin. And from there, she has been teaching at the Danforth Art School, Hopkinton Center for the Arts. Lee's work has been juried into regional and national shows, including the North Carolina Museum of Art, the Raleigh Fine Arts Society, the Raleigh Visual Art Exchange, the Morini Gallery, Lexington Art Walk, and Cambridge Art Association. You're going to see that much of her work is associated with space, with texture, and with architecture. So thank you tonight. Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you. I don't normally do this kind of talk. I normally do teach. So this is going to be kind of a free-form talk with you. And you can tell me or if you have questions, please feel free to ask at any time. I'll worry about this as time goes on because I've always been with my kids. It's the very first day. I can't even sleep the night before. So, and I do that every 8 weeks. So it's kind of crazy. But anyway, I'll just tell a little bit more and elaborate on some of the things. In my architecture degree is based on the design Bauhaus model. I went to NC State. A lot of my stuff really came from thinking about you can do anything a million different ways. Some ways are better than others, and but you always get to the end point somehow. But you'll find your way. And then after I graduated, I knew first there was no architecture jobs at the time because it was a recession. And then the other thing that happened is I was like, I really wanted to be an artist because that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. My mom made me go to architecture school. So anyway, I ended up going back anyway to do art. And it was an all-girls school. So I went from like this Bauhaus crazy throw everything. The first thing that they told us to do was design red. And that was kind of like your introduction into art. No other art, the design idea. There was no other thing we were given except for that, and that was it. So, and then I went to art school, all women's Baptist school, which was also very interesting because it was super liberal, except for certain things. There were I never took live model drawing because you couldn't have so many good people. So it was hilarious. But they actually dissociated themselves from the Southern Baptist Convention, so that was awesome. But but they still had this kind of like very prim and proper kind of like. But anyway, so I had these weird things coming from there. But I also grew up in the rural South. But I was near Raleigh. So I had both of those things. And a lot of the stuff that I do, and you'll see in my images, are based on the rural side of me because that's where I feel like home when I'm really, that's one of the reasons why I like Franklin so much is because I still feel a little bit of that, it's not the city, but I can go there if I want to. And then I can come back and then there's trees and, there's places to be and walk. And anyway, that's the kind of the reason I'm happy here. In Franklin. Let me see what else. So what I was thinking of doing, and hopefully this will be okay, was to start off. I was going to tell a little bit about my work, just kind of how I think about it. And I am the insane person because I was a teacher, and I still am. And all I do is I think about, well, if I have this, sometimes I won't have to think about it. And I put them in the little pockets.
Thank you.
But these are kind of, the things that are there are just like my brainstorms about where I am and what I do and how I think. And some of this has happened because of my teaching at Danforth and at Hopkinton.
Now, with these handouts, you want them to fit, they're in bunches of two? No.
There's 6 of them, so it's a little packet of 6. And also, this is also keep me straight because this is my process. And then everything else is just kind of what I think of when I'm doing my work. And the first thing I have in there that really is interesting is the little. This is my handout I give every student, no matter if I teach older people, students, or my little tiny second and third graders. I always give this because it's just a little thing about thinking about what you want to say when you put your artwork out there. And so it's like an idea of, it's not rules for composition, but it's like really honing in on what you want to tell the audience. And so what I've done over here is I'm going to start with some of the older stuff that's over here. I don't have the original photo for this, but this little house that I started doing really, really fine detail finally in my life. It was like about 15 years ago. And this was in Virginia. It was just a little place on the side of the road. And I really just enjoyed the fact that it had 1, 2, and then the little parts of it, 3 windows, there was a long window floor, and then there was 5 of them all together. Anyway, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was looking at the progression of spaces on this little boundary.
Did you take photographs then, or is that
Yes.
you were working mostly from photographs?
I mostly work from photographs, especially for my older work, because a lot of the stuff that I do, I'm just like driving down the road and I'll see something and I'll stop, take a picture of it, and they're usually really, really horrible photos on my phone. So the idea is that I can take something that's really awful and turn it into something that's worthy. Or I can change the idea of what it is. For example, this is an interesting piece. This is on the inside of this house, which somehow relates to my grandmother's. I can't remember this. Her father. Anyway, it's in my line, but that was his house. And on the inside, there's a place that you can look through. All the stuff is peeling off. It's actually much, much dingier and dirtier than this, but I liked the light that was on the wall. And so I just focused on that. I changed the colors, and I made up the stuff on the outside because that was the interesting thing, was the pristine stuff out there and the light coming through. So whenever I call this one a little light, and the idea is just that something very quiet and hopefully the light plays nicely. Another thing that I did with what I'm doing with that's this house as well. And these are like quick snapshots, different times of year when I go visit my mom back in North Carolina. And this is the back of the house too. I've modified it a little bit to make it my own at this point because I was more interested in that little bit there. And so this is what I'm gonna paint tonight. But that's the little the idea of taking something and then cropping it out and really looking at it. And the thing that I love about this is the brick chimney falling down and the bits of pieces that are kind of coming off there. This particular place is not going to be in our family for forever. It's going to have to be sold out because it's near an interstate and it's so commercial now. There's no use in keeping it, and because the taxes are ridiculous on it. So anyway, so I'm just trying at this point in my life to get pictures and things and my feelings about it as I go through that. The withdrawal of not having that place to go to anymore. It's gonna be weird. But anyway, that's one thing. This back in the back, this is from a long time ago. when I was in college, I took a photography class, and these are all developed pictures that I took of this little house that is beside the road on the Highway 70 from Raleigh to Garner. If anybody knows where there is. From Raleigh to going to Garner on Highway 70 in North Carolina. So yes, its little house was on the side of the road. It had hay on the inside of it, which was used as a storehouse. And they were expanding the road at that time. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it's gone. So this is like my documentation of it, and all the roads and the trucks, they were just flying by as we were going through it. So I was going to make like a little snapshot of it, and the reason I brought this in here is to show you, as you see this go, the process of how I layer things up. There's like tons and tons of layers of things. I don't stop with one. It probably takes me, like I'll show you a picture, it took me 6 months to finish. But I'm a very meticulous painter sometimes, and it's really annoying. But then again, sometimes I can turn something out really quickly too. But anyway, these were all little photographs and snapshots of how I came up with the idea for this little picture. And I was painting it about 10, 15 years after I took the photos. So it's kind of like a rehashing of it, which brings me to this guy. This is one of my much newer pieces. It is complete. And the reason I have this painting is because when I was 17, I painted this picture for my mom in watercolor. I still have it. And she actually wanted me to see if I could figure out a way to get rid of the, it's acid. The acid in it was turning yellow. And I couldn't figure out how to get it out because I don't know of any way to get rid of the acidity. And it was just kind of nasty. Look at the tape in the back. It's like disgusting. But anyway, this was my painting that I did then of this picture that I had taken when I was about 10. So it's like an older picture too at that time. I'm 52. Tomorrow, actually. So, anyway, this is a long time ago. So it's probably, no, if this is there, this is like 40 years ago when I took the photograph originally. And then I did this 7 or 8 years later. And then I did this right at the beginning of COVID because I started painting it in COVID because what else do we have to do? You're stuck in the house all the time. So this is where I started from. So I took the idea from this, and then I started researching online, and I found images of what it looked like because I hadn't been there in years. And this is an image I found of what it looked like now, or more recently. And in 2006, there was a hurricane. It busted the dam, and the Corps of Engineers wouldn't let them fix it. So that's the water back here that I thought was gone forever. But I happened to drive by on my way to my friend's house who lives near the coast. And I went by that, I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is. And so I stopped and I took my own photograph again, of what it is now. And the water's back, and it's just really overgrown, and it's kind of interesting. But it's definitely not how it was when I remembered it from a long time ago. They painted it white. They added some railings, and the windows were nicer. So I took it and I made my own interpretation of what I felt like this building should look like. And just to show you my layering, how I start, this was the beginning of the picture. And has no color on it because I knew that I was going to put trees there. So I just concentrated on getting my water on that part. This is here, there's not much back there. And then I was working on getting the water to run, starting to think about where my the trees would go and how this would look like in the background. And it went through a couple of iterations. I have a critique group I go to, and in our critique group we talk about sometimes some of the things, and the shoreline changed a little bit, and my lights and darks changed a little bit, but not too much as we were going through. And then this is the second place I was at with this piece. I don't think it's the final.
Those glazes that you're putting on top?
I put glazes and sometimes opaque pieces. It just depends on what I want to obliterate or to accentuate. Like I was working here, there's a lot of really opaque stuff, and there's like several layers of leaves that put on top of each other. It's because I like the idea that it kind of like in life, I'm layering the leaf on top of the leaf. So a lot of my stuff is I'd start with little bits, and I start in the back and work forward. This was all one color at one time. I put about 5 layers of water on this part here. So, and if you look and see different colors that are put on top, like the very pale blue, and then some of the more opaque areas where it gets closer to this color. I was trying to really kind of pull that out. And I was changing a lot back up in here too, because I had a lot of trouble making sure I could get my. I wanted some things to come forward, some things to go back, and I was pushing and pulling and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I also am an experimenter, so as I go, if it doesn't work like I want it to work, I'll just push it back or paint over it or whatever. It's all good. I figured by the time, like I said, it may take you years to get there, but there'll be an end at some point. And like I have a painting right now, I'm going to go back. It's a picture I did of my children, and it's a 4 foot by 5 foot, I think. A weird rectangle thing I did of them in the woods at my mom's house. And I don't like it anymore, so I'm going to change all the picture. I'm going to go back over and do it again. So it's not done. It's like years done, you know. This is my favorite painting right now that I've completed also during COVID. And I call this one "The Cheese Stands Alone," or that's my tentative name for this one. And the reason, well, yes, the cheese stands alone. And he's all by himself, and that's okay. I'm so sorry. I'm not very good at keeping up with this here. But with this particular piece, this is located, and I took this photo a long time ago, behind the Art Museum in North Carolina. They have a huge sculpture walking park, kind of like Franklin has one too. Kind of like that, but back in the back, it's just really interesting. And there's this huge set of power lines, kind of like Franklin too, that goes through an area nearby. And I took this photograph of it, and then I just wanted to, what I was trying to do, and this is how I also look at my work, is like I want to focus in and think about what is most important to me and kind of focused in on it. And so that's why this was the piece I wanted to complement with this, and kind of have them have a conversation together about how they're very, it's sad and it's good at the same time. It's like progress, but at what price kind of idea. So anyway, and then that's when I cropped it down, I took it down, and then I made kind of changed some things about it, softened some areas. I got rid of, there's a bunch of clutter back here. I got rid of all that, and accentuated that color, I think. And I took out the clouds because they were distracting. I put them in there and they didn't work. So I had a lot of things pushing and pulling back there and trying to get that back there. I think I also added extra light too, but that pulled you. I wanted you to look at this in a kind of a strange way. So anyway, that's my favorite painting right now. I just finished it probably 6 months ago, maybe. I'm not sure. But it took forever because there's a lot of little details and stuff. And when I gave you these little handouts, one of the things I'm realizing about myself as I'm teaching and I'm doing other stuff, this is my favorite person. I love Van Gogh. And I don't love Van Gogh necessarily just because of his paintings. This is his drawing. And when he thinks about putting things together, he thinks about, or he thought about, direction and textures of all the things. And if you look at his painting after this drawing, you can see exactly where he got it from, how he put it all together. And so when I'm thinking about my work, I like to try to put as much drawing texture as I can with my paint. And that's why when you look at them, they have all this stuff in here. I'm starting to get softer. Like that's a little harder than this one. This one came after that one. But it's, if you look at those things, you can really see how I'm drawing with paint. And I figured that's what I really do. I draw with paint. I'm not just thinking in painting terms. I like to put textures in there, lines, heavy things, light things, think thick and thin. So that's why I put all this lovely stuff on here. It's just to tell, it's kind of, if you can look at that and look at these things, maybe you'll see where my crazy brain goes. Also, one of the things that has started hitting me since I've been teaching a lot of drawing, and I'm not a drawer. It's really weird. But when you cross contour is the most incredible thing that has hit me about how I think about space and spatial things and the direction, and it goes back to Van Gogh too, is like where your edges, how are you explaining the shape with the brush strokes and the shapes that you put down on the parts. Like, for example, when I really get going into this, the verticals of this, keeping that line work even on the shading, and I'll do that some tonight. And thinking about texture of the wood, doing graffito, anything and everything you could think of, but related to thinking about the three-dimensionalness of making your marks on the canvas or your paper or whatever you're doing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about that stuff. I did include this just in case you're interested, and I did it for 2 reasons. One of the things is over time, oil paint is really smelly, and I'm an asthmatic. I don't know about you. Sometimes when I'm breathing in some of the fumes, it can get to me after a while, and I get frustrated. And so I have been teaching some less toxic versions of oil. So I won't use the cadmiums and all that kind of stuff. I use the hues, but there's solvent-free stuff now. And so I have a bunch of this stuff, and that's included in there just if you're interested in something that doesn't smell quite as bad and you don't have to breathe in much. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's that stuff. So let's see. Do you have questions for me, or can I answer anything based on what I've talked about so far?
Yes, I really like that you think of just not one picture, you think of many things, like you look at something, you look deeper into something that can create a new theme or a new picture within itself, and that's the beauty of it all. And when you put it all together, it kind of makes a story. And your mind or your way of thinking, your art and process side, very beautiful. You take, again, a certain area of the picture that really you like the most, and you really work very you involve yourself really deeply in it. So it's really nice to see.
Thank you. So I guess what I could do is does it sound okay to go ahead and I can do a little demo of just working on this going to the next stage, kind of telling you where I am at this point. I've only done one layer, so at this point this is just blocking in the color. I always draw out my pieces, and I use, hopefully I'm sorry. I'm your spastic person. I usually use chalk pastel, actually, to do my drawings and my underdrawings, because I figured by the time I get in there, it will blend to paint. It won't influence it too much, and I can choose colors to make it work with paint if I wanted to. But you can kind of see where I've gone over and actually corrected some things too. There's like 2 tones of color in there from my first drawing. I knew that I wanted to keep these lines, so sometimes what I'll do is I'll outline with my paint, and that's where I am in a couple of these paintings too. If you'll, like, I've started to put the lighter sky in, and I just left the blue lines there, and I'm not sure yet how I will deal with that, if I even put very much line for the power lines or not, because that's kind of worked pretty nicely, except that I do like that too, but I don't know. It's one of those things where this painting is going to go on for a couple more years, I think. Anyway.
Excuse me, Lee, did you say that those paintings were not finished yet?
No, none of those are done. They're in different stages of being completed. Like this one, this is farther back than the others. You can kind of tell. This is just blocking in. This is really, really liney. I've put a darker color, and I'm starting to finish the colors on this one with the pieces, even though I haven't done the lines. I like to do line work, so there's going to be like on this on the handout thing. If you look at all the line work, there'll be line work on it just like that. I just haven't gotten it yet. And but they're all the same picture. I drew it one time, and then I put it on tracing paper, and then I traced my house on every single one, so they should be the same on every piece. And then I looked at my photographs and tried to figure out how to convey about the trucks that were passing by. And so I just drew in the different ones that I saw. Or changed them. I did change something on. I can't remember what I did, but I know it's not exactly like a photograph. The problem I had a little bit was trying to figure out how much like the photograph could be when you're talking about motion. And this is not quite done yet. I was going to say I still have that is the roof piece there, but I don't think I put any, I think that's just the base from how it was before. I just want to make sure you can see it each time you get the little bits and pieces and the things behind it. And I know I haven't done that. That's the green grass back under there. But yes, they're all in different places and stages as I'm working on this one.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Because I'm fascinated with big trucks. And how do we make it look like they are moving? Because they're like,
One of the things I was trying to do, as I was thinking about them, was keeping the lines going horizontal, kind of to go with the accentuation of the truck. I did have a hard time figuring out this, and I'm not sure if this is there yet, because it's still, like I'm thinking about cartoons, when you think about when they put the lines and they make, like nice verticals back to the back to suggest speed. So trying to convey that, and also the blurriness of the photographs I took, has been really interesting, because this is actually, I had to interpret this really hard because they did have like a million different little dots. So anyway, I was trying to do line work to kind of accentuate the horizontal just speed and fuzzy, especially on those. So I don't know that the little one is there yet either, but yes, so many little parts and pieces and that kind of stuff. Any more questions? Because I'm a talker. I'm sorry. All right. So what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about how I think about painting too. And I teach acrylic, watercolor, drawing, studio, sculpture, even now. So when I think about teaching color theory and all the other kinds of things, this is how I paint too. And I use a warm set of primaries and a cool set of primaries. And sometimes I even have magenta. I don't have magenta tonight. I just have alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and a lemon yellow. Actually, nope, back up. Alizarin crimson, phthalo blue, lemon yellow, and then ultramarine, cadmium warm, medium, and cadmium medium, red. And those are my two sets of colors. And so when I'm thinking about color, all I do is I think, do I want it to go cool? Do I want it to go hot? And how that works on my canvas. So at this point, I've started this. I've got the sky kind of in a place. I'm probably going to put another layer on, but I think I'm ready to start doing this part. So I could just talk about how I want to put my color on and start putting color on if that sounds okay with everybody. And any questions you have about what I'm doing, just let me throw it at me, because that might be an easier way to think about it. I will probably yak a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about what I'm thinking as I'm going, but I don't know that it will be that interesting sometimes. So I'm gonna do it just thinking out loud, if that makes sense. So first what I'm gonna do, and I don't know if I've got mine there. Okay. First what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at the skyline and work my way forward, because you always start at the back and work your way forward, and I do it several times. And the color for the house part there is going to be kind of in a gray tone, and I think it's on the tone of the sky. I use phthalo for that, so I'm going to go back in there and grab some of that color. Some of my white. See if I can get a good gray on here.
Please.
Yes.
You talk about doing many layers, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you first start on the first layer, can you sort of know what the subsequent layers are going to be?
Sort of. What I think, yes. When I think about it is I want to put down a base color that I know that if it shows through, that it will be okay for the next layer to see through. So to me, this is like a kind of weird rusty light color that I could use. And so when I put this next coat on, I'm going to think about this gray and then these rusty tones, and I'm going to start to put them kind of blending together. And then I'll keep going so that when it comes the next layer, I'll even think about how crusty rust, how am I going to do that layer. But this layer is going to be mostly just trying to get the shading or the mixture of the rust and the piece together. So I do plan it out kind of in that way, but sometimes it goes in weird directions. It doesn't always, like I have a plan, but whether is that actual plan? It's kind of like that's where the design stuff comes in. It's like, well, if it didn't work, I'll just do something else. So that's just kind of how I think about those particular things. It took me a long time to not be afraid to mess up a lot. And I have to say that was one of the most liberating steps, is to just give yourself room to just totally blow it and then not be afraid to put something else on top of it. So I think that has helped me more than anything else that I've ever done before. And I'm teaching that to my kids too, and I hope that helps, because I feel like a lot of times when I'm teaching my kids, they are so afraid to do things, to mess up, to do anything wrong. It's like, oh, I was like, no, don't, just go with it. And then they'll just kind of figure it out, and it's okay. They didn't explode in any moment or anything else. It just kind of, you just do your thing. A couple of colors I'm using, I'm mixing that phthalo and white, and I'm getting kind of this gray tone that's kind of similar to this. Now I'm going to lighten it up a lot. And I don't really mix my colors too much because I like to have variations when I'm working.
And you're getting the one.
Yes. Yes. So I'm mixing blue. It's basically I'm mixing the green blue with the warm orange, because I know that it will go more. It's really red, but it acts more like an orange when you put it in with that part. When you put the other, it de-intensifies it and makes it much muddier. So it's more of my gray, like on the house itself. Let's see. I'm going to add, for the rusty parts, I'm probably just going to use some cadmium and a little bit of, that's burnt sienna. And I always have umber, a little bit of umber anyway. And I like to mix a black, and my black is going to be the umber and ultramarine. So then I get like a really interesting kind of greeny, black, brown, purple color. But I don't need to do tons and tons of mixing either. Like I said, a lot of my stuff gets mixed on the canvas. Another thing I use that, and I apologize, but I did not find them. I just bought liquid because my last little container is messed up. But this is a different company's version of liquid. And but what it does is it makes things a little smoother. It's a resin. It's supposed to not yellow. I've never figured out how you have a resin that is the color of brown and it doesn't change the color. I've never, anyway, it just glazes over my stuff. And of all the things that I have that smell, it is the worst smelling thing. It's the liquid. The paints actually don't smell as bad as that. And so that's my only toxic thing that I use.
Is that a Ganso product?
This one is, and I think this one actually slows down.
Is that Meglip?
Yeah.
Meglip?
Yes, it's Neo-Meglip, so
Right.
it remains workable for hours. So, but the liquid actually speeds it up,
Right.
and I prefer that. So for doing my layers, but when I'm mixing my stuff, I will use this. I use all kinds of resiny stuff, but I don't like paint directly out of the tube either because it's too thick. And like I said, I do lots and lots of layers, so they're all about the same. I know that there's a thick over thin and all this stuff, but I've not had problems except for with some of my very early work when I used real oil and they cracked, and it was I didn't understand that. But at this point, I've not had any trouble using the different resins on top. I use Rembrandt and Winsor Newton, and I have some because I couldn't get large tubes anymore of Rembrandt. I think because of the price, nobody would buy them. But anyway, it was okay. So I just like I like big tubes because I don't run out as fast. But my favorite is Rembrandt. If I can afford it, I'll get this. I do use gambling. I did a lot of research on white because white yellows over time. And I found they were saying that over the course of time, gambling white doesn't yellow as much. And so I was like, okay, I'll just try it and see how it goes. So anyway, that's why I use that. And
titanium?
Yes, this is the titanium white. But I have gambling for that. And then Winsor Newton, I have some. Oh, when I'm using that the solvent-free stuff that doesn't smell as much, it's a gambling product. And so I have all this stuff in there too, and I've been using. This is solvent-free gel, and they encourage the safflower oil. It's actually for cleaning brushes and everything, so you don't even use solvent at all. You're using oil. I thought it was weird. So anyway, I have it. I've done it. It's interesting, and it's there. But that's my the colors I use. But like I said, I have tried Utrecht's, but it's no. I prefer the other. I do scrum lumber too. Sometimes, depending on what kind of sale I can get. So anyway. Okay. Anything else? All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with this top part here. And what I'm going to do is, because I'm thinking about the linear quality of it going across the back here, I'm going to go across this way. And I'll start with, I do use a certain paintbrush though. I have some different ones, but for the most part, I love silver white brushes. And I think I listed that. Or silver brushes, and they're called Bristolon. I'm horrible artist on my brushes. I don't clean them out nicely. I'm a bad person. So these brushes have withstood me, and I can even let them dry. And if I use Pine Sol and a lot of Dawn, I can clean them and they're usable still. So anyway, these are my friends. A lot of times I get distracted. I don't know if you can tell that about me, but I get distracted about lots of things going on. And I just forget them and I leave them there, and they're messy, and I'm like, oops. But they are really nice. I'm using a flat brush. I usually use flat brushes because flat brushes are, they give me my best edge. It's not that I'll use them all the time. Sometimes filberts are best for when you're doing your trees. You want soft edges, but I cut my best edges with actually a flat brush. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of get my colors started here. And start putting in places where I see where it's whitish. And then I'll modify it depending on what I want. I start out with the photo, but sometimes it goes off from the original. And this is where I would probably go in and start putting in some color in different places. Like this is there's a lot of brown over here. That's not right brown. I think it's the sienna, burnt sienna. I think I'm going to start with some of these reds. Blending them in. I painted my grandmother's house a lot. My cousin, basically he inherited my grandmother's house from his parents. And He lived in it a while, and then he built his own house and then tore hers down. And a lot of the stuff that I loved about that house was the roof was made of tin like this. And so I painted it a lot. There's a lot of pictures. That one that piece is the one that went to the Museum of Art. They don't own it, but it was curated into a show. And then on this little piece here, this one, that's the end of my grandmother's house, and I love the roof on it. And I played up a lot of it. I wanted it to be really, really warm, so I put a lot of yellow, make it a happy, warm thing. And that's the chicken coop. You're looking over the chicken coop and looking at the end of my grandmother's house. It's called The End. Yeah. It's just a weird little thing.
And where is that now?
That's in North Carolina too. I have a hard time. I'm still getting my bearings up here for painting, because I have to have a lot of connection to what I'm doing. That seems to be how all my things work. It's like I've got a thing with them. They all something about them, and a lot of it I think has to do with my childhood too. I don't know.
Because all of the paintings that you have here tonight are from North Carolina.
Yes, yes. And I'm trying to think about how I've done a couple of paintings up here, but I have not done many because I don't have the connection yet. But I'm getting there because my house is I live over on Cottage Street, and it's an old house, and there's a lot of things I want to talk about it. I'm getting to that point where I need to have a conversation about that house because it's driving me. I love the house, and it's an insane little house. So anyway, I'll probably have some of those coming soon. And I've got a whole series where I was taking pictures when I was walking downtown and some other stuff too. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I have to. My brain has to come out with how it'll come out. It just takes a little bit of time. I mean, some of this stuff is like from 17, it's like 40 years. So I don't know. I've been here 8 years. This will be our 8th year. So a little bit. I'm just trying to get this. It's a raggedy roof, so I'm not really all that concerned if it's not quite straight right now. But I'm going to get some of the color all the way across and start building up some of that white.
Tried acrylic?
Yes, in fact, I started with acrylics. My first classes in design school. I loved my teacher. Just crazy, interesting, contemporary guy. And he, we had to learn to do all the acrylics with peeling tape and making very sharp edges, and because it was design school, these people, that's just how it is. And there were, I don't know. I've done acrylic, but the problem with acrylic is it dries too fast. I can't deal with. I like to blend, and I play with my things. Like tomorrow, this will be dry enough that it won't move so much, but it will be tacky. And so the next layer I can kind of force into it so that it'll kind of they'll sit together. But I can still influence the layer underneath it a little bit. And so that's one of the reasons why right now I'm teaching so much that I don't have enough time to do that. Like I can't get the next day, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So I've had a lot of trouble recently with that. But it's okay, it's a good problem to have too.
I also think the colors are not the same with the acrylic.
No, and the sheen and how they interact with each other and how you can look down. Yes. Yeah, it does make a difference. I have one of the sets I use now is called the Golden Open acrylic, and it's supposed to be more like oil because it has a agent that keeps it from drying so fast as you're doing it, but it's still completely dry in a couple of days. Where I can, depending on how much stuff I use, I can probably go back in some of my white areas in a week because they're still there. They're still going. Anyway, it's it's personal preference. I have a couple of students that I'm teaching. They can't stand oil because it doesn't dry fast enough. So it's like, it's just how you feel about your things. Now what I'm doing now is I'm adding texture, because in the roof, when it rusts and it comes up, there's this white crusty stuff that comes up on the metal, and it goes with the flow of the water down. And so I'm just adding little bits and pieces of those things there. I'm gonna get them, just get it started. And then I'll start adding in highlights in the dark, some lights on the piece. And there's a lot of color in this. There's like mossy green and all that kind of stuff because this is out in the middle of a field. And there's a big tree that sits on top of it. I went there recently and we were looking at the property and there's a family, I didn't know this, but I was named after this lady who's buried on this property, and there's like her thing, so it's a family plot. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway, her last name was Lee, and I named for her, and I didn't know that. But anyway, it's behind this too. So all this stuff like comes together when you start painting something. I start thinking about it. That's why I have all this connection to this, the ridiculousness of stuff. But anyway. There's a lot of little lines going across the piece. I'm going to pull them across.
Leah, you painting on a stretched canvas?
No. Oh, I
Can't
am.
tell what you're using.
That's a good question. So what I'm painting on is, and I paint almost exclusively if I can. I still have some canvases left, and I'll pull them out every now and then. Like this one is on canvas. But I like board because I don't know if you look at my paintings, I'm a haphazard kind of person. So the back of my car is my van for all my stuff, and including my paintings. And so it goes in there, and sometimes it comes out, and it's not like it was when it came in. In fact, I know I have a painting I did when I was in college in there from using it for something else. And I noticed that I was like, oh crap, because one of the when you sit it back there, it kind of pushed through and I'm like, oh. I'm telling you, I'm a haphazard kind of person. But then again, I keep going to myself, well, if it isn't gone, nobody cared enough about it to get it. So I don't really need to worry about it too much. And I can paint another one, so that way.
So what kind of board is it?
These are birch plywood. I'm trying to think. I use different brands. In Raleigh, where there used to be there's Jerry's Art Rama, and I know there's one in Providence. But they supplied our school I used them a lot, and they were very nice to me, and so I used them for a very, very long time. And they had different versions of it. This one, if you look, it's more of a pine kind of or fir piece here, and then you can, it's very yellowy. But the newer ones seem to be more birch, clear like this, and poplar backboard parts. But they're, and I always write on the back of my paintings the stories that go with them, because I'll forget as I get older, I'm pretty sure. And anyway, I feel
Come framed like that with the backing, with the raised frame on the back.
Yes, and you can get different sizes. Like this is 7/8, and that one's 7/8. This one is 1 5/8, and they have, if you can get the large ones, because they do have 30 by 60, or they have a bigger one, but it's not as big as I can get canvases. But those are about 2 1/4. The frame, so that it's very sturdy, and they can get very heavy, because that's one of that is a difference between this, is because this is wood. It's not as light as a canvas, because canvas has a little bit of nail. I do like gallery wrap, and I do like the thicker things if I want to have canvas, because I don't frame. I just paint black on the sides. And there's a lot of time, there's different things about that. But my professor, who I was describing, is my first professor with acrylic painting. One of the things he talks about how this is a universe, and it's a plane, and it shouldn't be connected to the side because this doesn't have anything to do with the thing. It's just a slice of reality. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, that's why I leave mine dark and black on the side. I don't wrap mine around. So anyway, little tiny. I don't imagine I would care if I actually did wrap around. I've done it before, but I really, it's easier to do this, and I kind of do like the idea that it's just a surface, and that you're kind of creating this thing that goes in. Because one of the things I do hope that I do when you look at these is that you go in. I hope there's like space that you go that you don't just stop in the front part of it and stay there, that you go back. So anyway, that's another reason to have the sides dark and not wrapped around. So I've started there. Now, probably what I would keep doing is I would keep going in that direction, but I'm just going to start showing some of the stuff I would do for the parts going up. I want this to be directional, and I want it to go up. And at this point, I know that the edges of these things catch light, so I want it to have some line. I'll start to fill in some of these places where I put dark. I left it open, actually, is what I did there. One thing I did do, I couldn't, at the time, I needed to buy more liquid, so I used another type of resin, too, that I had in the house, but it was the very thin kind, and it's shiny, and I hate that. I really, really hate shiny when I'm painting.
So you don't glaze your paintings after they're done?
I do, but I use satin, or I know I put it on. You can't really tell because I still scratched that one, but that's got a coat on it. But this one does not. I haven't done a final on that one yet. Who knows? I'm going to go back into it again. There's just no end to it. But I did have another little tidbit that I try to remember and think about when I'm doing any kind of painting, is the 80-20 rule. When you get to a certain point, if you can't improve it in a way that someone really notices, is it worth spending the extra time to do it? And you have to make that decision. So that's sometimes how I, when you're trying to figure out where the end of a painting is, because you can keep working forever, ever and ever. Do that. I'm kind of completing the white parts and pulling them in. And I do need more blue. But like I said, if this doesn't work for my next layer, I'll just do just go in and I'll just put another layer on. So sometimes I feel like I don't think of it ever as an end. So that's basically, based on how I'm going to do it, I'm just going to keep layering colors over and over. The brick will be an interesting idea. Since these are all vertical, I'm going to play up the fact that the brick go the other direction. I'll go ahead and do some of that too, just so you can see what will go. But I'll kind of do like I started there. I'll put the base on. The bricks are a little different than they have a dark coat, and then they kind of have, especially the top is burnt, and they tip over. And then I'll put in some.
So that's alizarin?
That's actually burnt sienna.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I'm going to put on top of it, I'm going to start putting a little bit of cadmium yellow. And I'll probably put some of that red into here, some white. And I like to paint layers on top of each other. I mix on canvas. I don't necessarily mix my colors. This is, the base on the bottom. And I want to do some red. I'll bring it down a little bit. What you think about it, this tilted. Accentuate that, I think. I'll exaggerate a little bit. I've done brick a lot. There's a couple of really interesting churches in North Carolina when I was there, because that was when I painted them while I was down there. And they had slate. This was in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I saw it when I was driving by, so I stopped, took a picture of it, and then I started working on it. But it was really interesting because I think it's interesting to put lots of color into brick or stone, because it really does have a lot of different parts and ways to it, doesn't it? The salt that comes out, like in my house I'm living in now, has lots of salt that comes through because it's very, very old and the water comes on top. I just got it on my hand. I always have. Sometimes I have baby wipes. Sometimes this stuff, because that's already dry. I usually have Q-tips or some other little bit that I have around to take off little parts of things. This is just Gamsol, the solvent. I'm going to take it down for just a second. I have, and my friend too. So there's another person I used to teach in North Carolina, and my coworker and I, there were 3 art teachers at our high school, and anyway, she moved back to Pennsylvania, and we meet every now and then on the weekends on Zoom and paint together. So, I don't know why I was calling that story, but anyway, I was just thinking about the fact that we have all these little techniques that we've done together, like we took classes together and we were doing things. Do you guys use these to get rid of stuff and to do sgraffito? It's a little rubber bendy thing. You can take these and, like, if I wanted to make this have some line work in it, you can scrape off stuff with it.
Those are the shaping tools we use with clay.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Yeah, I use them with my pet though.
It works really nicely, and they're just, it's a fantastic tool. You don't think that I know my hands look like. Come on, Beth. Anyway, you can do those things too, and that we had developed that for our needs. I miss her a lot. Right now, I'm still also in a group that I used to be in, a co-op group in Raleigh. I'm actually going to be in a show down there soon. This will be the first one I've ever done near my mom's house, of the places that are nearby where I'm actually painting. So it's kind of interesting. I'm hoping that maybe that will be a break for the stuff I put out there.
Does Danforth have any shows now?
The show that they're having their first one, they sent out a thing for their inaugural one. You didn't have to remember anything. You could enter. I think the deadline was. I didn't do it. I couldn't get it done. It was too much. It was the Hopkinton just had one on the 2nd, May 2nd, and I think it was the 26th. was the one that was going to be for Danforth, and it was an open show. So you could submit anything. There was no theme or anything. So they're starting again. They're starting to have more things shown, getting their feet under them. I taught there when they were transitioning from the old building because the boiler broke, and it was a mess. And we taught in this little, for summer school, we taught in May Hall on Framingham State. We taught there for one summer for the kids. And then the next time we taught in, I taught in that, there's a house that you can see from Route 9 that's in the middle of the parking lot. And we taught there while they were still working on putting together the building there and now, which is, oh gosh, what's the name of it? I painted it twice. I can't think of it right now.
So do they have a lot of adult classes there?
They have adult classes and they have youth. Yes.
So you would go on the Danforth.
Yes. Website. There's a section on there for classes, and it's divided into youth, high school. Actually, it's divided into the elementary level and middle school and high school and adults.
So how many instructors do they have?
Right now, they're looking for instructors too. So if anybody knows anybody, they're looking for people. And one of the things that's nice about working at Danforth and the things that we're doing there is that they are, we incorporate the museum shows into our stuff, and it's changing all the time. So it makes you have to go downstairs and look at all the stuff and decide what's important about the artwork, and then you have to create projects around them. So it's just a different kind of challenge. It's kind of fun, I think, especially for the kids. For adults, it's different. It's just teaching the classes, and we can take people downstairs to see the shows too. But for the most part, it's the technique and thinking about composition. I teach foundation level classes, so I because that's what I like to teach the most, is the very, very basics of thinking about where you're going, learning to put together things instead of I'm a thinker. I think about things a lot, so to me that's the easier part to teach, is because I'm always trying to put together something, and then that's kind of anyway. That's why I teach the foundation level. I don't think that is very coherent, but it's like. And
We normally take a break.
yes, that's what I was going to ask about. That's fine.
So people can come closer, see your palette.
Sure.
Also, we have snacks and water there. So, and if you're interested, if any of you are new and would like to consider membership, our treasurer is here, and Diana, do you have membership forms? And anybody is interested in becoming a member and then being able to show at the gallery in Franklin, please check with Diana. She's here and she has membership applications. Yes, there's a bathroom right under the exit sign. Yeah. So, anyway. Yes. Sure.
Thank you. And if you have any parts that you would like me to work on in particular, I could do that too. If not, I'll just keep going with the bricks and start with that part. And then actually, I really need to block this stuff in down here too. And I don't think I've addressed that.
And what is that on the right?
This part?
Okay.
Yes. It was the kitchen. There were two parts of the house, and the kitchen went between. The kitchen was separate, and it had a little piece between the back part of it. It's a really rundown. It's like my uncle has he has wood stored in it. It's like whenever old buildings go start to deteriorate, everybody just shoves stuff in them that doesn't really matter, but they need shelter. So you can go in here and there's actually, we would go down there, it's in the middle of nowhere, off the dirt road, that they are now building all these apartments around, which is insane because it really is a dirt road. People dump stuff down that road. There's a little creek that ran down the side. People would go down and just dump things down there. There was even a dead body there at one point. So it's really creepy and very, very bad. That was a huge to do because it was very, very secluded. So anyway, you go back here and you can go inside, and sometimes you'll find McDonald's wrappers and all kinds of things where people are coming in and they hang out in these old house buildings. It's really creepy. But my uncle put up all these gates and stuff so you can't drive cars up near it, and all this. Anyway, it's an interesting
Will they
thing.
eventually take it down and
Yeah, I eventually it's going to get sold, I'm pretty sure, and then all of it will be gone. There's this really cool. I went the last time I went to see my mom. I wish I brought those pictures too. There's another old house that's down that's even in worse shape than this one. It actually has parts of that are open to the sky. You can't really walk in it. There's one little section left, and it was the living room, and it has a door in one of the corners, and there was a stair that kind of went up to the upstairs, but there's no wall behind it, and it's like 3 stairs to the door, and then there's like 3 stairs that turn up. So I've got some pictures, and I'm probably going to do that one eventually too. But anyway, they're all just decrepit little buildings falling down, and just interesting. And my mom keeps reminding me that her grandfather probably laid the bricks in that chimney, and I'm like, okay. Hopefully, it's really scary. It's like this one where it's starting to fall apart. I need my other
So are you gonna add any of the shadowing of the tree into the picture, you think, or are you gonna avoid?
I think
that one's. I'm looking at that one. I'm sorry.
on that one I will. I am, and I'm going to do that one too. It's the same. It's the same house. This point of view, you can see the brick there,
Sure.
and that broken glass window piece down there on the bottom. But you can see the tin where it's coming off. That's
Yeah.
the tin part
Right.
there. But yeah, there's a gigantic oak tree behind it on the back. That's where the little cemetery is, under the tree. It's really interesting. And like part of them don't have actual markers on them; they just have rocks. So they don't even know all the people that are in that particular little cemetery. But
Lots of history.
yeah, they'll have to deal with it at some point, because if it does get sold for commercial, because it's a commercial area, I don't know. It's going to be weird.
Now, when you build up the tin area with the, I'm gonna say the stain on it. In
Yes.
the rust, does it raise up because you have so many layers on it? Does it ever get a raised? No.
A little. It's I mean, if you feel these, especially in some of the places where
Maybe well, leaves.
definitely the leaves are really thick, but like in some of the corners and like the edge of this, you can feel it if you can feel the layers there. But like some of this stuff is so thin. Like I think that is 3 or 4 layers. So this top layer is the dark. That is a glaze. I think I glazed the dark on here to make it kind of go back a little more.
And you can use that with the light breaking across it,
Yeah.
Just with that tin seal roof, that would be interesting to have that.
Yeah.
Almost attached to it.
I think that would be kind of, and I could probably do like this up here, like start to build that up, and I could do that on that part too. When I do the wood, my plan is to do the sgraffito. I've done that before too. On I'll show you when you do, what color is that? The dark red one. So if I were doing there's the house on Union Street that they're doing. The old part of the wood is dark, and then they're reshingling the side. You guys, anyway, here. That it's interesting about the wood coloring, and I think about that every time I go by that house because all the new cedar and versus the old cedar. It's kind of interesting. It's the one on that corner, and it has green trim, I think.
Yeah, and like bricks that are stacked up like they
Yes,
like
in the
they're
front.
Make a sidewalk for the last 13 years. It's like they're about to make a sidewalk.
Yes.
Exactly what Tasha means.
Yes, that one. And I love the coloration of the wood, and I think of that. That's what I think of when I think of trying to when I'm doing wood. And just you can see the colorations and the lines of the wood in it. But the old wood has that grayish kind of beach, the bleached driftwood kind of look. And the older houses like this, where they've been kind of neglected. Okay, so on this particular house down in here, this is not the right color, but I'm just going to go ahead and go with it. And like I said, I will fix it later, so it's all good. So I'm going to put this little darker color on. And then if this were my final coat, I could come in with, I usually have the little pointy clay tools that we were talking about earlier. And actually, there's one I have that's actually like a point, like a pencil point, and you can go in and you can take and scrape out, the stuff. So some of that texture comes out from there. So I'll have some of that probably, especially on the wooden parts, because I'll come back in and do this. It works much better if I have a couple of layers, like a dark layer and a light layer. But it really it's nice, and it really kind of emphasizes all these older places where they have all that wood that's deteriorated and deep into it and stuff. Anyway, I'll go back up here and do a little bit more up there, and I think I'm gonna grab some more white. I tend to use a lot of white. I have a crimper too. I don't know if you guys have you seen these? This is the best tip in the world if you haven't used them. Metal ones, not the plastic ones. The metal ones stink. The plastic ones stink. But these are.
I have a couple of those for the printmaking ink in my classroom, and my students are always like, "It's empty, it's empty." I'm like, "Oh, it is so not empty."
Yes, these things are awesome. And especially when you get like the more expensive stuff like printmaking ink and all that kind of stuff. Yes. Oh. I love it. You can tell that I use it because it has all the little bits and pieces.
I'm gonna leave this for you.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Please enjoy
Yes.
For next year,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
unless you want to be in the gallery this year.
You can join now, and we will cover you for next year. We'll roll it forward. Right?
You don't need to do that. I would rather donate. I would rather donate to.
I'm speaking from board here without a turn.
I was gonna ask if that's the.
I mean, it is May.
Yeah, because
It's kind of.
It is May, though.
I know, at this point,
Wait till
we
it's
should, don't you think so, Jeff?
You
At this point, I think we should
gallery.
allow
wanna be in the
people
gallery.
closer to go toward next year.
So reasonable.
But for me, I want you to just take the money for this year and I'll pay again next year if I join, because that's how I want it done.
What's that, Lee?
I said, for me, I wouldn't want to do that. I want to, if I join this year, I'm going to go ahead and join this year and then join next year too.
You do?
Yes, I want this extra of money.
Wow. Well,
So, yes.
well, I seem to have lost my.
The fact that you'll take me now is awesome.
It's right here.
Oh, never mind.
You just picked it up a minute ago.
Oh.
That's okay.
Lost my mind is what I lost.
It happens a little.
You ever use a straight edge?
Um,
Mostly by hand?
I mostly do it by hand. Sometimes I do have some constructed painting where I actually go in, and that one, in fact, is constructed. So I used points, and I had this big stick. I stuck a big stick and then put points on each side, and then used this stuff. Anyway, yeah, it's sometimes I'll do construction and that kind of stuff as well. But it just depends on how I'm feeling at the time. I am such a spastic person. I can't do more. That's one of the reasons why I don't paint the same all the time. My paintings differ. You can tell some of my stuff is very dotty because this is made up, whereas this I had a really cool idea from the beginning where it came from. That one's made up. That one's real. So when you start, and some of these I have to make up bits and pieces and leave out and push and pull so they look. I tend to think some things look cartoony and some things look more realistic, just depending on what I'm doing. I don't know I don't know if that helps or not. But it's.
I guess with all of your progress work, how do you choose to spend your time?
The last time I tried to paint all 6 of them at the same time, or 7. Actually, no 6. I actually have another one that I had done before that was the original painting of this series that I no longer have. I actually sold it. Yeah, but some of the times when you can tell which ones I was working on together. I had this one, all at the same time, and they looked like this. So I had them all in that particular state, but then I didn't have any space. I couldn't figure my studio space was not big enough, so I only worked on those 3. And I think my planning was that I was thinking 1, 2, 3, but I don't know. I can still rearrange these in some order, but the idea was that we had the house, truck, house, and then just hopefully it's like little snapshots of things zooming by.
So that's like some full project that
Yes.
you're painting.
Yeah, this is a separate painting. Yeah, I can't work on that one right now because I can't think 6 wide at this particular time. So I know that's I'm very peculiar.
Well, I think the whole part is that if the talking about I think it looks like the pieces together. So it's,
Right.
it's so graphic. You were talking about cartoon, but more like a snapshot of the comic, like a graphic novel.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that idea. Let me steal your idea and put it on my idea. That's exactly what I was thinking. Totally. I was telling somebody about that too. I remember in school. That's one of the things we always did. There was a notorious student we knew. I knew him. He just would do stuff and throw it together and come in. And none of us were like, we were all like, we were up till 2, 3 in the morning. We're so dead. We're coming in. Oh my God. And he comes jaunting in. And he can tell everybody all about his stuff. And I was thinking of all these grandiose things. And it's like a stick or something. And we're like, oh, and the professor's eating it. Oh, I can't stand it. I understand that that's a good thing to be able to do, but I just can't do it. And I guess I'm jealous. I don't know. But anyway, thinking of stealing ideas, it's like, well, yes, exactly. We were told. That's when I learned. Don't just take it. Like somebody says something, always say, yes, you're right. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I read a lot of graphic. Like exactly, your poster house. It looks like.
I agree.
Oh yeah, it seems like a good path.
Yeah. Let me know when I'm boring you to death, or if I can answer any other thing, or if there's something I can do.
I think we probably ought to think about wrapping up because the janitor kills her. It does.
I'm going to paint this one last piece right here. This is how I start out with the gray, and now I would use this gray layer to start putting on that rust on top of it. That's my things. The next layer would be more of a technology kind of thing. And I'm starting to pull the line, so start to get those things.
That's amazing with brick though.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank you very much,
You're
ladies.
welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening.